Hello and thank you for coming to check this out. Okay, so here is our latest After Effects reproduction in Apple Motion 5. You can see the source animation here. It's done in After Effects. It's from this designer here, SayFaraday, and there's a link in the description if you want to go and check that out at the Envato Market. So the project file is there for you to download. You can get that from the link in the description. So we'll go through each element step by step. And I'm going to stop and pay some close attention to how these swirling circles here were done. These elements are the reason I chose this one to do, because I hadn't come across them before. And also we're going to take a quick look at how to do these running paths, which is happening around this logo base here. Okay, so let's get started then. Okay, so here we are in the project file that's available for you to download. So this is the project here, and here are all the groups with the elements. This group here is the actual reference animation that I used to reproduce this logo, and I'm playing it over the top of the project, and I've turned down the opacity. So what you're looking at here is both of the animations running at the same time. So we can kind of get an idea of just how close we come to reproducing this one. Sometimes with these reproductions I get really close. Others are as close as I can get them, just at my skill level. I think with this one we're kind of halfway. I think the general timing of each element is quite good, and overall they run almost frame for frame, but you can see that quite a few elements are just a little bit out of sync with time and a little bit out of place. But I think overall it was quite a good reproduction for this one. Okay then, so let's get started with the first elements, push 1 and push 2. In the groups push 1 and push 2, we have the big circle and the rounded square. So they push in from the back and scale out of the canvas there, and they kind of welcome in one set of elements and then welcome in the next set of elements here. So in the group we can see the big rounded white square, and it's just keyframe to scale, and it has an image mask applied, and the source for the image mask is the circle. Here, you see here. So the circle is coming in, scaling in on a slightly slower curve, so that the rounded rectangle will push into it and get masked out to create that effect there. And like I said before, push 2 is just a straight duplicate of these two, just recolored. No change with timing or anything. They just come in here at 1 second 13. Okay, so then the next element is this group here, pump. So in this group you'll find these guys here. So there's an overshoot applied to the group so that both elements follow the same overshoot path. Then the rectangle itself is keyframed to rotate on the z-axis, and the curve here, it starts slowly, then whips around as it gets to the steeper part of the curve, and then finishes easing in. So coming up next we have these, well, let's have a look at the rings. So the rings are these green guys here. So in previous logo reproductions, we've looked at how these rings are done, but let's cover it again quickly. So to get the ring to have that outline come in and then wipe out like that, let's do another one very quickly. I'll grab the circle here and I'm going to come back with this circle, and let's just drop the scale to 0 here, and let's do over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's do it over 15 frames. Bring that scale back up to 100. So this guy's going to scale in, and then what I'll do is I'll duplicate that. I'll call it mask. I'll come back and I'm going to offset that to start, let's say, 2 frames after the original circle. So I'll just use Shift left bracket on the keyboard. Then I'll grab that first circle, add image mask, and drop the mask circle in. And set that blend mode to subtract. So that's how we get the decreasing outline. So then what I want to do, can you see that there is a slight remnants of the outline? So at that last frame there, we come into the mask source, come into properties, and we're going to increase that to 105% so that it gets completely masked out. So that is the base, and that is how you'll find that base here in this group ring source. So that is exactly what's going on. So what I've done to get the circles working, you can see they start from around this point and they spread out over around 10 to 12 frames there. So I took the mask, I took the ring source here and I replicated it, and you'll find them here in this group here, ring clones. So there's the replicator, and if I turn on guides, that is the first one there. So in this replicator, we can see the replicator is set to a circle, and there's just one point, and the arrangement is outlined. So it's just a circle with a circle replicator with one ring on it. And the radius, you can see, is keyframe to start from 198 out to 303. And you can see the guides here. That's where I've matched up the exact point where the source animation had its first circle. So that was the first ring, and then what I've done, I've just cloned this first one here to get ring 2, and I've just turned that clone around on its axis, and that clone is offset to start a little bit later, and that's what we have done for 3, 4 and 5 as well. So that brings us to the shooting lines. So you'll find the shooting lines in this huge group here, shooting lines, so let's go and have a look at them. To get a good look at the shooters, I just turned off all of the other groups. So we can see there's 3 waves of them. We've got the yellow ones coming out first, and then the green. Then later on with that second push, we've got these grey ones here. So they are all here in this group, shooting line bursts. There's 3 groups, grey, green and yellow, and in each group you'll see 7 more groups, and each group in here is one line. It's not how I would usually do these elements. Usually I would take one source, replicate that into a circle, and keyframe the radius of the circle to push them out. Here is the actual source for all of the lines right here. You can see in the keyframe editor here that it's just this chap here. If I turn guides back on, so this is the source, and the anchor point is set down here at the bottom, and it's just keyframe for the last point offset and first point offset to write it on and off. So usually I'd have a circle replicator driving that with some scale randomness. But for this reproduction, no matter how much adapting and tweaking with the replicator I did, I couldn't get them to match the actual lines that were showing on the reproduction. So what I did is I replicated it just to a point. It should be showing this point there, and I added a sequence replicator to that, and in the sequence replicator you see I've just added the X position to drive it along. This is the replicator you're looking at here. So this was the first one done, and from there, like I did with the rings, what I would usually do if I'm going to use that method, I would just clone the first one and then turn them around and reposition them. But it turns out that each of the shooting lines has its own speed of writing on and off, so that's why I've done one group for each line, and you can see they're just positioned around to match as close as possible with the After Effects source graphic that we did. So that's the shooting line. So I just did the yellow ones first, and then the green ones are a duplicate of those, and then the grey ones again are a duplicate, but when it came to the grey ones, they have a slightly different placement, especially this one here, which comes out much further down. Right, so that is the shooting lines covered. So then next we get to the swirling circles. The swirling circles are here in this group. So there are two replicators here, one for green, one for yellow. Let's have a quick look at how they were done. I'll grab the circle tool. I'll come into properties and center that. So now I'll hit L on the keyboard to replicate that, and we'll have the replicator as a circle with an outline fill with just 2 points. Then I'm going to add from behaviors a sequence replicator, and I'll have that trimmed out at 10 frames. So for the sequence replicator, I'm going to add scale and set sequencing to from, set unit size to all, and we'll have them start from 25%. So now over 10 frames, they scale from 25% to 100. So the next thing we want to do is have them push out and pull back in. So we do that by animating the radius of the replicator here. So I want the radius to reach its maximum point at the same time as they reach 100% scale. So on frame 10, I'll set a keyframe on the radius and push it out, and then at the start I'll pull that right back. So that is the beginning there. So then we want them to rotate and pull back in. So I'm going to come forward 1, 2, 3 frames and set another keyframe on that radius, and then come to 1 second and drop that right back to where it was. So they rush out and then slowly come back in. I can come into the keyframe editor here and adjust this curve so that it's so that towards the end they rush in to meet each other there. And this part of the curve I'll set that so they push out quickly. So they'll push out quickly and then slowly come back to their starting position. Then to have them rotate, I'll come to the replicator and come to properties and set a keyframe here, and then come back to the start. Let's just give it 360. It's not quite that in the reproduction, but it's good for an example. And I will come to the keyframe curve and right at the halfway point there, 15, we want to start making a steep section in the curve so that when they meet the steeper section they whip around noticeably. So how's this looking? Okay, so roughly that's how the swirling circles were done. Exactly, actually. The only difference is the fine-tuning of the keyframe curves and the rotation as well. So for the yellow circles, I just did the green circles first, and then you can see the yellow circles, it's just an exact copy that is offset to come in 4 frames later. So that is how we did the swirling circles, and now we can have a look at the logo group and the tagline. The logo elements are all in this group. We've got the base shape, runner path 1 and 2, that's the outlines you can see writing on and off, and the motion logo and the motion logo long shadow. The logo group itself has an overshoot applied, so all of the elements are coming in on the same overshoot. Then the motion logo itself has its own overshoot, which is timed against the group overshoot, so that as the green square pulls back for the first time, the white motion logo is pushing forward. The motion logo is just a graphic I got from the internet, and I added a fill filter on it to turn it white. This has been duplicated. This is the duplicate here. The duplicate has an extrude filter added, and the extrude filter is giving us the long shadow. So you can see at the beginning the extrusion is very short, but by by the end of the logo animation, the extrusion has pushed into the square. This shadow has an image mask applied, and the source for the image mask is the green base shape. So the base shape is clipping it off. Otherwise, the extrusion filter would be pushing right through. So the extrude filter is very short at the beginning, but by the end it has to push through to be clipped out, and that is done by adding a short keyframe to the distance here. So right at frame 1 second 24 frames, the distance jumps from 84 to 157. So those are the logo elements. Let's stop and have a look at how we do these running borders. I've just turned off all the project file groups and set us up with this rectangle here to work with. So I have the fill turned off. The outline here has a width of 10. I turned off the start and end caps, and we have geometry roundness here set to 25. So with the playhead at the start here, I'm going to bring last point offset down to 0 and set a keyframe. Then bring the playhead forward by 25 frames and bring last point offset up to 100%. And I'll grab the curve in the keyframe editor here and change the interpolation to Bezier. Break the tangent on this handle and pull this handle back this way a little. So now our path is writing on, and we want it to write off next, so I will bring the playhead to 3 frames, grab the first point offset here and set a keyframe, then come to frame 25 and bring the first point offset up to 100. And we don't want to overlap here, so I'm going to grab the first point offset curve, change that to Bezier, so now they meet right at the same point here. So on the canvas we now have the path writing on and off, and you can see how the path length gets longer and shorter as it goes. So for beginners out there, that's determined by the distance down here between the last point offset curve and the first point offset curve, which is following behind it. So you see, the wider this distance gets, the longer the path gets. So toward the end, as it tapers out, we get the path running in there and finishing up nicely. You want to have this kind of taper down here. Otherwise, it will kind of reach this point and then just disappear. So that is the first step, and then what we want to do from here is duplicate that, come into properties, come to the rotation here, and we're going to flip it around 180 on the X and 180 again on the Y. So now you can see that's the basic way to get the running paths for your animations. If you have downloaded the project file, then you can open it up and see what else was done for this element to get it looking as close as possible to the After Effects animation that we were reproducing. Alright then, let's go and have a look at the tagline. The tagline is in here, in this group here, so we have got the 2 text elements, upper and lower, and the overshoot is applied to the group as a whole, and then there's a fade in over 11 frames applied. And to be honest, just like with most of the elements in this reproduction, I think the tagline I have here, it's close, it's similar, but still it's not as smooth and it doesn't flow as well as the source animation. So there we are. That is another After Effects logo reproduction done with Motion 5. And the project file is there for you to download. And just a quick mention about the border flourish that we did here. So for our working example, I used keyframing, but you can just use motion behaviors. And the reason I didn't cover it here is that I've already covered it in another guide. So if you want to check out more about how to use the write-on behaviors and ramp behaviors instead of keyframing to get a similar animation, then there's a link in the description for you if you want to check out that guide. Okay then, hey, thanks for checking this out and thanks for watching.